Do you ever struggle to get them pumping, snappy, groovy house drums? Well, if so, this is the video for you because I'm going to show you how to make the best drums you've ever made in the shortest amount of time. Let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, I like to start with my big three. That is my kick, my clap, and my open hat. The reason I start here is because they are the most important parts of any drums. If you take any song you like, there isn't a time where you don't hear the kick, clap, and open hat when the rest of the drums are playing, right? So it makes sense to focus a lot of my time there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out a drum rack and I'm going to go to my sample pack. You can also download the sample pack I'm using here for free, which has my big three elements, my favorite kicks, my favorite claps, and my open hats. That is a link in the description. You can download that for free now and follow along with the video. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these kicks and put them into a drum rack. Okay, starting with the kick, let's get a simple 4 to the floor kick. At this point, I don't care about kick groove. I will come back and adjust the groove later. 4 to the floor, very, very simple. 1 in every beat. I'm going to do the same with the open hat and the clap. Now, we just want the kick and clap to have a nice relationship. I'm just going by ear right now. I'm just saying, I'll scroll through and I will just listen and see if I hear anything that kind of takes my fancy as we scroll through. Okay, I'm going to go for a nice hard-hitting clap like that. Let's duplicate it over. The only thing I'm going to change and edit here is I'm just going to play with the envelope a little bit because how we fold the sounds, how we fold the envelope really matters in terms of how many frequencies we can fit in the overall mix of the song later. So, classic mode, and dial back the decay and the sustain a little bit, make it a little bit snappier. Clap done. Let's go ahead, do exactly the same with the open hat. Once I've got the MIDI in, I'm just going to scroll through and find one that sounds like a nice tone. Now, right now, I don't care if it's too long. I can control that with the envelope. I just care about the tone of the hat right now, and the tone is the right vibe. Slower it down, mix it. Okay, scrolling through. All right, that's a bit more my style. Very classic drum beat. Okay, so with this, again, going into the individual hat, find the one that's playing here. Make sure that start time is really, really pushed up to the transient. Otherwise, you'll get a bit of a delay on your drums. You don't want that. Just constantly going back and adjusting these volumes. Sounds good to me so far. At this point, it's going to be very dry. It's going to sound very basic and amateur. And that is okay because we start making it more complicated now. What I'm going to reach for now is I need to sit back and say to myself, what am I trying to make here? Producers seem to think that creativity just flows out the fingertips and should just arrive in the door with no intention of where they're trying to take these drums or the sound they're trying to achieve. I really want you to sit back at this point. Now you've got a kick, clap, and open hat and say, where am I trying to go? Because, for example, if I'm trying to make a more 90s old school feeling, then I know now I need to start reaching for more old school sounds. If I'm going very current, very hard hitting, very peak time, well, I know what I pick next needs to be hard hitting and peak time. Now, I am going to lean on loops at this stage. So I'm going to go to splice. You may not be able to see the screen here. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. It shouldn't matter too much. I'm going to go to splice. I'm going to filter on house drums. And all I'm going to do is scroll through my sample library. I don't care if it's a hat loop. I don't care if it's a percussion loop. I don't care what it is. I'm just going to stop when I hear something and say, that's cool. And that's good enough for me right now. So okay, so I found this loop here and I'm going to drag it in. It seems like it probably is going to be out of time, but it's quite inspiring for me. Now, it's warped onto beats mode, and what I'm going to do is change that to complex for now, just because you can hear when it's on beats mode, we get this glitchy feeling from it. When I put it to complex, that disappears. So once I've got it on complex, I'm then going to consolidate it so that that complex warp has now burned into the sample. I'm then going to go ahead and just listen to it with my drums so far and see what is it that I like about this and what is it that I don't. If I don't like it, I am so fast to move on. We do not sit here fighting with it for ages. Right now, it's about the sample selection and not about how we can create something crazy with processing to fit it into the track. Okay, there's a few sounds in that I like, so I'm going to start chopping this up. I really like that first hit. I think it really brings something to the project. I also might use the clap that's built in because it's nice. It layers with our clap nicely. So I'm actually, whenever I make changes, I will duplicate the channel first. I will duplicate the loop now, and I will slice out only the clap. So we have two separate channels instead of getting complex and having a clap, a percussion hit, a snare all on one channel. We can't really process that well if it's all on one channel. That's why I don't use drum racks full of like kicks, hats, claps in one drum rack, because I want control of the processing, and I find that much easier to do on separate channels than going into the individual sound on the drum rack, processing it, so on and so forth. So right, let's go back to the original loop again and just see, is there any other sounds that we like? I do like the snare, don't get me wrong, but I think I will make the snare with something else. Right, I really love the snare at the end here. That's the one that I'm liking the most. Again, let's name this clap. And we're just getting a bit of a kitty of sound together here. Let's name this one perk hit. Let's duplicate the perk hit channel and now chop out this snare that was at the end of this loop. That sound there. Okay, delete everything else, just that snare hit. Let's get this clap layered on top of ours, duplicate it over to every 4/4 clap. Perfect. And let's just see one more time with the original source loop. Is there anything else that we can steal, essentially? Quite liking the shaker sound at the start. What I'm going to do is create a shaker from that too. And right now, I'm just going to chop out the individual sound and leave it like that. Now I'm going to start working these individual sounds into the project. The beauty of doing what I'm doing here is I'm not struggling for sound selection, because instead of going through individual one shots, I've heard the full loop in context and I know all of these sounds work together. So when I'm chopping it out of a loop, it means that the clap is definitely going to go with the percussion hit that I chopped out, which is also definitely going to go with the shaker, because I've already listened to the full loop and I know them sounds all work. So moving on, let's start creating. With the shaker, I'm going to put it onto a MIDI channel. I think it's much easier to work in MIDI when we're creating things like shakers. So now I'm going to drag the shaker down here that we just chopped out. I can now go ahead and delete that shaker channel, and I can start drilling into the actual sound here. For a shaker like this, I'm just going to go ahead and put it on every 16th note, and then we'll decide once we hear it where to go. Okay. Okay, I'm already using a swing here, by the way. I'm not going to drill into things like swing today. I'm just going to get on with it and write the drum pattern. Okay, I'm going to randomize the velocity a little bit, make it a bit more human. So I don't want to randomize too much, but maybe about 50%. It's just pumping in and out a little bit more there now. Let's name that shaker. Okay, that shaker is not bad at all. We're going to come back round to it soon. This is not the final result. We just want to start getting things placed first. Then we'll do the fine tuning later. I want to duplicate this snare over here. With a snare, I will tend to again put it on now on a MIDI channel, just so I get a bit more control over the placement. It's just how I work. There is absolutely zero problem with leaving it as audio and placing it on the grid here. It's just out of habit. I've learned to use MIDI. I find it a bit easier, so I'm going to drag that snare. I believe that was the snare. Yeah, it was the snare. Okay. And I believe it's here at the end of the... I'm going to actually move that snare where it was originally. I think down here sounded better. I think one of the last 16th there might sound cool. Again, just getting the placement. All right, so we've got a couple of percussions in there. We're starting to get a little bit of a snare pattern going. I am now just going to do exactly the same again with another loop. So again, I'm not going to listen to the project as I'm trying to find samples. I'm just going to stop in Splice when something feels inspiring to me. All right, so I came across this nice full loop here, which inspired me. It sounded quite cool. And again, I've listened to it and I'm just going to pick out the bits that I liked the sound of, which was this first hit. I like that. Yeah, nice. That bounces off the other percussion nicely. Okay, I think it's only that one individual sound I actually like in that full loop. So let's repeat that every bar. For these style of drums, I want to keep it nice and loopy. Okay, sounding good. It's starting to get my head nodding a little bit, and that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so let's call this perk hit 2. Again, placement isn't perfect. Notice I'm not quantizing it or anything like that because it sounds good to my ears. That's good enough. I move fast as you see through this. I'm not fanning around for too long. I just came across this loop here and I really like the snare in it. I think it's maybe a bit big for this track or this style, but we'll keep going. Do you know what? I've brought it in and I'm like, actually that seems to gel quite nicely. It's giving some nice texture to the drums. And I'm not going to get too analytical or critical with it. What I'm going to use this as is a top loop. And what I use a top loop for is to fill out all of the missing space that we've not occupied, basically. So now, once we've got a little basic groove going on like this, it's going to be very rough around the edges, not polished. It's kind of, everything's a little bit loose right now. This is where I do what I call circle back 1. Circle back 1 is where we start at the top again. We make sure everything's nicely balanced, nicely mixed, and we've pushed the groove to its absolute limit. We don't want to overfill the drums. I see it time and time again with my clients where they will have 15, 16 layers of drums sometimes. You do not need that many right at this stage, at the initial stage of the track. As long as our head's nodding a little bit, we've got the main elements in there. We want to get onto the main part of the song, the hook, the bass lines, things like that, as quick as possible. Otherwise, if you spend too long in these beginner's initial stages, you end up hating your song because you've listened to it too much. So I'm moving quickly. Let's go now back to the kick, solo that, and we can hear it's a little bit gritty, a little bit too much top end on it. I'm going to just back off that a little bit. It's this kind of sound in here in the mid. Maybe a little bit too punchy too. In here, I'm just going to back off that frequency too. And I like to mix as I go. Okay, actually it's this, so just made it a little bit rounder now and a little less distorted. Still distorted, but let's keep going. Okay, backing off the clap. And I'm going to add my reverb to it. Like so. Same with the hat. Now with my hat, I like to dial in the tonal balance of it using the EQ. There's two parts of the hat. You've got the kind of tone to it and you've got the air, the brightness at the top. And I treat these separately. I tune into them separately, meaning I'm listening to the body and then I'm listening to the top end. Let me show you that in action. So I'm going to actually EQ off the low end and I'm going to keep backing off this frequency until you'll start to hear the body disappearing. Much more of a light, bright hat. So if I was going for something a little bit more summery and dancey and kind of housey, I'll probably likely take some of the weight of it and the body off of the hat. In this style, what I'm going for today though, I'm going to leave some of that body in. We could even add a bit more body in there and a bit less air. It's a more weighty, old school sounding hat now, okay? So I treat them separately. For this, I think maybe the top's down slightly. And I call this tonal shaping. We're tonally shaping the sound using an EQ. Again, reverb. When dialing in reverb, I highly recommend you go too far and then dial it back to where you think it sounds good, rather than just adding just until you just about hear it. When you add more and then take off, kind of do it in a subtractive way, it means that you can clearly tune in to what the reverb sounds like, and you can lock your ears into that sound, then back off the dry wet. Now, if I wanted to make this track a little bit more rolling, if I was going for something really peak hour, I might be keen to do this sound every half a bar. And this is going to really bring some more energy to the track. If I did it every half a bar, even though it's very loopy right now, it will start lifting the energy of these drums a bit. Watch. You see the pace of the track has lifted a little bit, but for the style I'm going for here, I just want it every one bar. Now let's tie all of these drums together using the loop now. Let's lower it right down and start bringing it up until we just start hearing it. And I start hearing, now that we've got things mixed better, start hearing that's not really going to do this track justice, is it? It's not terrible. If it's 80% there, I don't mind playing with it and trying to get it to fit. If it's like, no, 60% good enough, then I'm just going to scrap it and get another loop in there. But for now, let's try what everyone uses. I tend not to actually use this transient shaper inside, not transient shaper, but the transient preserve inside of Ableton anymore. The reason for that is because it brings a very, very harsh feeling to the transients. I prefer to use a transient shaper like Transient Master instead. However, for the benefit of this, now the obvious next steps are to add a bass line, add some synths and interest layers. Now, if you find that you do that and your track sounds boring when you start arranging it, watch this video next and that will help you out.